When a woman enters her divine season, winds hush and stars hold their breath. She no longer asks, she declares. No longer waits, she moves. The soil remembers her footsteps. Mountains bow gently. She is not becoming, she is. And in her rising, the world begins to remember its own divinity. There comes a moment in a woman's life when the quiet whispers inside her soul grow louder than the noise around her. It does not announce itself with fireworks or demand applause. It arrives softly, like dawn stretching over a long, cold night. And though no one else may notice it, she does. She knows. Something inside her has shifted. This is awakening. She begins to see with new eyes, eyes that have looked upon sorrow and not been blinded, that have known joy and not forgotten the ache. These eyes look in the mirror and find not flaws to be fixed, but layers to be honored. She sees not what the world told her to become, but who she has always been beneath the trying, beneath the pleasing, beneath the performing. The woman she truly is begins to rise. In this season, she no longer seeks permission to be whole. She does not explain her need for silence, her desire for space, her hunger for more. She does not shrink when she is misunderstood. Instead, she becomes rooted in the soil of her own knowing. Her truth becomes her home. The voices that once told her she was too much or not enough begin to fade. Their power evaporates because she no longer feeds them with her doubt. Awakening is not loud, it is not glamorous, it does not always feel like liberation. Sometimes it feels like heartbreak, sometimes it feels like loss because it is. She loses illusions, she sheds the skin of old selves, old roles, old stories that no longer fit. It stings, but she stays with it. She does not run from her reflection or numb the ache of her remembering. She breathes through it, she listens to it, and in that stillness, she is reborn. She starts to make choices not from fear or habit, but from clarity. She no longer bends herself to fit into rooms that insult her soul. She no longer laughs at what offends her or stays where she is not seen. Instead, she honors her intuition like scripture. She trusts the pull inside her chest. She does not always know where it leads, but she follows it anyway because she has learned that her spirit does not lie. The awakening woman becomes a mirror, not because she tries to be anything for anyone, but because in her being, others see themselves more clearly. Her courage reveals cowardice. Her peace exposes unrest. Her joy provokes envy, and her stillness disturbs those addicted to noise. But she does not apologize. Her life is no longer lived to appease. She does not dim her flame to comfort the shadows. She walks in light, even when it costs her comfort, even when it costs her company. The world may not understand her transformation, but that is not her concern. Her becoming is not for them. It is for her. It is for every younger version of herself who prayed to be free, who begged for peace, who longed to feel seen. It is for every little girl who still lives inside her, waiting to be rescued by the woman she would grow into. In this divine awakening, she realizes that she is the answer, not just to her own questions, but to her lineage's prayers. She is the first to say no, the first to walk away, the first to choose differently. She is the one her grandmothers whispered about in their dreams, the one who would not be silenced, the one who would not be broken, the one who would rise. This awakening is not a moment, it is a movement within her. It will stretch her, it will strip her, it will sanctify her, but she is ready. Ready not because she knows all the answers, but because she finally trusts herself to ask the right questions. She does not fear the dark anymore because she has found the light within it. So she rises, quietly, surely, divinely, and everything around her starts to notice, not because she demands it, but because she embodies it. And in her rising, she gives every other woman permission to rise too. Power is not loud. It does not shout to be heard or wave to be seen. Real power, the kind a woman discovers when she enters her divine season, is rooted, still, and undeniable. It lives in her spine, in the set of her shoulders, in the pause between her words. It is not forceful, it is full. She is no longer trying to be strong, she simply is. Not because the world demands it, but because she has finally stopped giving her strength away. She begins to understand that power is not in the roles she plays or the titles she holds. It is not in how well she conforms, how quietly she complies, or how much she endures without complaint. It is in her refusal to betray herself. It is in the boundaries she builds without apology, in the way she walks away when something does not honor her. Power is her ability to say no with grace, to say yes without guilt, and to choose herself even when it feels unfamiliar. There is no need for her to dominate a room. Her presence alone changes the temperature. She does not seek validation. She embodies value. People feel her before she speaks. They may not understand it, but they recognize it. Her power disorients those used to control because it cannot be manipulated. It cannot be bought, borrowed, or broken. It is hers. It has always been hers, even when it was buried beneath fear, people-pleasing, and silence. The powerful woman knows her worth is not transactional. She does not perform for acceptance. She does not overextend for love. She does not compete with other women because she knows that her power multiplies when shared. She uplifts because she no longer believes in scarcity. She builds bridges, not for approval, but because she understands that power aligned with purpose creates change that lasts beyond her lifetime. She learns to be soft and unshakable at once. Her tears do not weaken her, they cleanse her. Her vulnerability is not a wound, but a weapon of truth. She does not armor herself with anger, but walks clothed in clarity. She chooses peace not because she is passive, but because she no longer needs chaos to feel alive. Her power is the quiet assurance in her steps, the fire behind her calm, the dignity in her silence. In her divine season, she no longer resists who she is. She steps fully into her becoming, not to impress, but to express. She no longer asks, "Can I?" She says, "I will." And when fear rises, she meets it like an old companion, but does not let it lead. She has walked through too many storms to be shaken by weather. She has tasted too much truth to settle for lies. Her power does not need permission. It is not seeking approval. It is ancestral, cellular, spiritual. It pulses through her bloodline, passed down through generations of women who weren't allowed to speak, dream, or rest. And now it has found a vessel in her. She carries it not like a burden, but like a crown, not to be admired, but to be lived. She does not waste her power trying to convince anyone of her worth. She invests it in what matters, in her healing, in her art, in her voice, in her vision, in the women who walk beside her and the girls who watch her from afar. She understands that her presence in a room is a responsibility. So she uses her power to make space, not just take it. There will be moments when the world tries to reduce her, tries to remind her of the box she once fit into. But she has outgrown that now. She does not shrink back into safety. She remembers who she is, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs her comfort, especially then. Because power is not about control. It is about alignment. It is about remembering. It is about returning to the truth of who she is beneath the noise, beyond the narratives. And once a woman touches that truth, she cannot unknow it. She cannot unsee herself. She cannot go back to who she was. She walks forward. She stands taller. She speaks clearer. She loves deeper. And without lifting a finger, without raising her voice, she shifts the ground she walks on. That is power. Grace is not always gentle. It is not a dainty step or a soft-spoken word. Grace is the way a woman holds herself together when everything is falling apart. It is the way she walks into a room carrying the weight of generations, yet moves as though she's floating. Grace is not weakness, it is the quiet authority of someone who has faced chaos, pain, loss, and still chooses love, still chooses light, still chooses to stay open. When a woman enters her divine season, grace becomes her signature. Not because she's figured everything out, but because she no longer pretends she has to. She allows herself the space to be growing and whole at the same time. She doesn't demand perfection from herself or others. She holds herself accountable without self-abuse. She learns that grace is the space between where she was and where she's going, and she lives in that space with dignity. Grace shows up in the way she forgives, not just others, but herself. She stops replaying every wrong move, every time she trusted the wrong person or stayed too long. She looks at those moments not with shame, but with softness, because she sees who she was when she made those choices. She doesn't erase the pain, but she doesn't carry it like a banner either. She lays it down like a stone in a river, letting it shape her path but not drown her spirit. She moves with grace because she has learned the cost of bitterness. She has watched anger burn bridges she needed. She has seen resentment hollow her from the inside. So she releases, not because they deserve it, but because she does. She deserves the peace that comes from letting go. She deserves to live unburdened. Grace teaches her that freedom is not found in holding on tighter, but in loosening her grip. There is grace in her voice now, not because it never trembles, but because it speaks even when it does. She says what needs to be said, not to wound, but to reveal. She doesn't need to raise her volume to be heard. Her truth is enough. Her honesty cuts through noise like wind through trees, sharp and effortless. She doesn't argue for her worth. She no longer explains her no. She doesn't shrink her presence to soothe insecurity. She walks in rooms like she belongs because she finally believes it. Grace is in the way she treats others too, even those who once mishandled her, even those who can't see the new version of her because they're stuck on the old one. She doesn't need to prove anything to them. She's too busy blooming, and even when she has every reason to return cruelty, she doesn't. Not because she's afraid to fight, but because she no longer needs to. In her divine season, grace becomes her language. She is fluent in patience, fluent in self-respect, fluent in letting things unfold instead of forcing them. She understands that her timing is not everyone's timing. She learns to wait without bitterness and to act without desperation. She releases the need to control outcomes. She shows up, does her part, and allows life to meet her halfway. She stops rushing. She stops chasing. She understands that what's meant for her doesn't require her exhaustion. She doesn't hustle for her worth anymore. She works hard, yes, but not to be seen, not to prove. She works from overflow, not emptiness. She's no longer in survival mode. She's living now with rhythm, with rest, with reverence. And when she stumbles, and she will, grace catches her. It doesn't scold or shame her. It holds her steady. It reminds her that falling is not failure. It whispers that she's still worthy, even on the days she forgets how to shine. It calls her back to herself when she starts drifting into doubt. Grace becomes the hand she holds when no one else understands her path. There is beauty in the way she carries herself now, not because she's always poised, but because she's always real. Not because she never breaks, but because she never breaks alone. Grace surrounds her, lives in her, flows through her. She is no longer trying to impress. She is here to bless. She is not looking for applause. She is creating alignment. Grace is the evidence of her healing and the mark of her evolution. It is her quiet revolution, unfolding with every step she takes. Freedom is not the absence of barriers. It is the presence of self. When a woman enters her divine season, freedom becomes more than a dream. It becomes her daily breath. She no longer wears chains she's outgrown, even if those chains are familiar. She no longer stays in rooms where she has to mute her voice to be heard. She no longer wears masks to make others comfortable. Freedom is not something she seeks anymore. It's something she chooses. She begins to unlearn the lies, the ones that said she must be agreeable to be accepted, that she must stay small to be safe, that she must be selfless to be loved. She peels those stories off her skin like dead layers, no longer needing their weight. She understands now. Freedom is not granted, it is claimed. And she claims it with every decision to be more of herself and less of what the world expects her to be. There is a reckoning that happens in her soul, a quiet confrontation with every version of herself that settled, every version that tolerated, endured, suppressed. She doesn't hate them, she honors them because they survived, but she also tells them it's safe now, safe to let go, safe to step out, safe to be seen. She tells the little girl inside her that it's okay to speak, that being loud doesn't make her less lovable, that saying no doesn't make her cruel, that taking up space is not a sin. Freedom feels like exhaling after holding her breath for years. It feels like dancing without waiting for music, like laughing too loud and not apologizing for it, like wearing what she wants, saying what she feels, and trusting that her truth is enough. It's not about rebellion, it's about return, a return to her essence, a return to her rhythm, a return to her intuition, which was always wise, even when she was too afraid to listen. She begins to make choices that liberate her, not limit her. She lets go of relationships that drain her, not out of anger, but out of respect for herself, for her peace, for her purpose. She understands that freedom means walking away, even when love is present, but respect is not. Even when comfort whispers, stay. She knows now that anything costing her freedom is too expensive. Her thoughts become hers again. Not a collage of other people's opinions, but a canvas she paints with clarity. She stops asking for directions from people who've never walked her path. She stops comparing her pace to timelines she never agreed to. She understands that freedom has no schedule. It does not rush. It does not compete. It unfolds. In her divine season, her mind expands. She stops believing that her worth is tied to her productivity. She gives herself permission to rest, to pause, to play. She no longer feels guilty for joy. She no longer hustles for validation. She works, yes, but not from fear of lack. She works from love, from passion, from calling, and in doing so, her creativity returns, her laughter returns, her softness returns. Freedom brings her back to life. There is boldness in her now, a boldness that isn't loud, but unshakable. She speaks truth, even if her voice trembles. She takes risks, not because she's fearless, but because she's done being caged by doubt. She follows her curiosity like a compass. She chooses growth over familiarity, alignment over approval. She knows she might be misunderstood, but she would rather be misjudged than misplaced. Freedom also teaches her grace. She no longer clings to old pain. She lets go of resentment, of shame, of expectations. She does not seek revenge, only release, because she knows forgiveness is not for them, it's for her. She frees herself from being a prisoner of what she cannot change. She frees herself from the narrative that her past defines her future, and she becomes light, not because life is easy now, but because she has stopped carrying what was never hers. Her energy is different. Her joy is anchored. Her peace cannot be shaken. She becomes a walking permission slip. Every room she enters feels different, not because she demands it, but because she embodies what others long for, the freedom to be. She no longer waits for doors to open. She builds her own. She no longer asks if she's allowed. She remembers that she always was. She is not chasing freedom anymore. She is freedom, walking, breathing, becoming. Alignment is when a woman's soul, mind, and body begin to move in unison. It's the moment when she no longer needs to convince herself to stay where her spirit feels absent. It's not just about feeling good, it's about feeling true. When a woman enters her divine season, alignment becomes her compass. No longer is she pulled in every direction by the expectations of others. No longer does she pretend to be someone else just to belong. She walks with herself fully. And for the first time, it feels like coming home. She begins to listen, not to the noise of the world, but to the wisdom within. She hears her own voice rise above the opinions, the doubts, the comparisons. It has always been there, soft but steady, waiting for her to trust it. And now she does. She realizes that peace doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from living in harmony with her own truth. She no longer seeks alignment outside of herself, not in titles, not in lovers, not in crowded rooms where she must dim her light. She stops contorting her soul to fit into shapes that betray her essence. If something doesn't feel right, she lets it go, not with anger, but with clarity. Her spirit has no space for what's false. Her heart rejects what isn't meant, and her body tells the truth, even when her mind tries to negotiate. Alignment is not about perfection. It's about integrity. It's about making choices that reflect who she really is, even when no one is watching. It's in the quiet decisions, the ones that may seem small to the world but feel massive to her soul, like choosing rest over burnout, honesty over approval, boundaries over guilt, stillness over constant motion. It's the way she starts saying yes only when she means it, and no without apology. The more she aligns, the more she becomes magnetic, not because she's trying to attract, but because she's finally embodying her full self. People notice the shift, even if they can't name it. Her energy speaks before she does. There is nothing chaotic about her. Her presence feels like a mirror reflecting back truth, both comforting and confronting. She no longer tolerates the things that once drained her. She no longer participates in conversations that dishonor her values. Her time becomes sacred. Her energy becomes selective. She realizes that alignment requires sacrifice. She may lose people, opportunities, and habits she once clung to, but she gains herself. And that exchange is worth everything. She may grieve what falls away, but she does not chase it. She knows that anything not aligned with her growth is not a loss, it's a clearing. It's a divine redirection. What stays, stays deeper. What leaves, leaves with love. In alignment, her confidence becomes quiet but immovable. She doesn't need to defend her choices because they are rooted in her core. She doesn't seek validation because her truth doesn't waver with outside opinions. She stops second-guessing herself. She doesn't need signs anymore. She becomes the sign. Her intuition sharpens. Her vision clears. She recognizes what is for her, not by how it looks, but by how it feels. Every part of her life starts to reflect this alignment. Her relationships deepen because she's no longer hiding pieces of herself. Her work becomes more fulfilling because it flows from purpose rather than pressure. Her creativity returns because she's no longer using her energy to perform. Even her body feels different, less tense, more alive. Her entire being is in rhythm. She's not trying to manifest anything. She's simply aligning with who she truly is. And in that place, things begin to unfold, not through force, but through flow. She doesn't chase, she attracts. She doesn't beg, she invites. She doesn't strive, she allows. Life starts meeting her where she is because she's no longer scattered. She's centered, she's clear. And when things do fall apart, which they still might, she doesn't panic. She checks in with herself. She asks, is this mine to carry? Is this aligned with who I am becoming? And if it's not, she releases it. Not because it's easy, but because she's faithful to her truth now. Alignment gives her strength that doesn't shout and certainty that doesn't waver. She becomes a woman who walks her path with grace, not because she knows every step, but because she trusts her footing. She doesn't rush to the next thing. She honors where she is. She moves when it's time. And when she moves, it's with the full force of her soul behind her. That is the power of alignment. Impact is not always loud. It doesn't always arrive with applause or recognition. Sometimes it comes in a glance that makes someone feel seen, in words that break chains, in silence that speaks louder than noise. When a woman enters her divine season, her impact becomes inevitable, not because she's trying to make a mark, but because she is finally walking in her truth. And when a woman walks in truth, she leaves a trail of light behind her. She doesn't have to force influence. She is influence. Her choices echo in ways she may never witness. The way she holds her ground teaches others to stand. The way she rises after breaking shows others how to heal. Her presence becomes a mirror, reflecting possibilities, revealing courage, challenging complacency. People around her feel something shift, even if they can't name it. It's not because she is flawless, but because she is real. She has stopped trying to impress and started trying to impact. She's not interested in being remembered for how perfectly she performed. She wants to be remembered for how deeply she lived, how she loved, how she uplifted, how she changed the atmosphere with her presence alone. She knows now that her legacy will not be measured in noise, but in resonance, in how deeply she touched others without even trying to touch the spotlight. Her impact begins with how she treats herself. She honors her body, her mind, her time, her soul. She no longer sacrifices her well-being to keep others comfortable. She speaks kindly to herself, holds space for her own emotions, nurtures her peace like sacred ground. And in doing so, she gives others permission to do the same. She becomes a living example of self-respect. She doesn't need a microphone. Her energy does the talking. She stops hiding her story. What once felt like shame becomes her testimony. The pain she once buried now blooms into power. She understands that her story, raw and unpolished, is the medicine someone else might need. So she shares, not for sympathy, but for connection. She shares to remind others that healing is possible, that freedom is real, that brokenness is not the end, but the beginning. She understands that her impact doesn't have to be global to be great. A conversation can change a life. A gesture can mend a heart. A refusal to stay silent can spark a revolution. She's no longer chasing platform. She's building presence. She's no longer addicted to visibility. She's rooted in purpose. Whether 10 people witness her journey or 10,000, she remains the same, aligned, intentional, whole. She carries herself with humility, not because she doubts her brilliance, but because she knows true impact is never about ego. She's not above anyone. She walks beside. She lifts as she climbs. She doesn't hoard wisdom, she shares it. She doesn't gatekeep healing, she models it. And the lives she touches become brighter because she dared to shine. Even in her quietest seasons, she is making impact. In the way she chooses peace when she could choose chaos. In the way she stays kind in a world that rewards cruelty. In the way she stays soft without losing her edge. The people around her may not always say it, but they feel it. They feel the safety in her presence. They feel the intention in her words. They feel the integrity in her choices. And though she doesn't live for validation, sometimes the world responds. A young girl watching her learns she doesn't have to shrink. A friend going through darkness finds strength in her light. A stranger hears her speak and sees a path forward. She may never know the full extent of her reach, but she doesn't need to. Her soul knows, her purpose knows, and that's enough. Impact is no longer something she hopes to leave behind. It's something she carries into every room, into every conversation, into every act of love, every boundary drawn, every truth spoken. She does not just influence the world, she transforms it moment by moment, breath by breath, simply by being who she is. She understands now that when a woman is aligned with herself, when she walks in grace, rooted in power, holding freedom in one hand and wisdom in the other, she becomes impossible to ignore. She becomes unforgettable, not because of the noise she makes, but because of the way she makes people feel, because of the way she makes herself feel. That is impact. Quiet, holy, permanent. When a woman enters her divine season, nothing remains untouched. She awakens not just to who she is, but to who she's always been beneath the silence, beneath the striving. Power no longer lives outside of her. It rises from within. Grace becomes her rhythm, freedom becomes her oxygen, and alignment becomes her guide. She no longer seeks permission to be whole, she simply is. And in that wholeness, she leaves behind an impact that moves through hearts, through generations, through time. Her presence becomes a quiet revolution, not born from noise, but from truth. She does not chase greatness, she becomes it. She does not search for light, she is the light. This is her divine season. And from this moment forward, everything begins to change.